An Empire of Ice and Fire by Longclaw 1-6. Chapter 25. The Dragon Moves North. Already Daenerys found her two senior advisors waiting for her in her solar. Lady Stark, Lord Lannister. With Catelyn's loving treatment of the twins and her sharp mind, Dany was growing to value her counsel. Same with Tyrion, who she had made her hand not 2 weeks prior. Hearing their greetings, the Queen's mind was still replaying the conversation she had had not 10 minutes before. You are not going to Westeros, Daario. I need you here in Meereen. The city is on a knife's edge, and I need someone I can trust to protect it and its people. Fuck Meereen. And fuck the people. They are not who I swore myself to. It hadn't been something she looked forward to, crushing Daario's hopes like that. He was a strong ally of hers, and challenging company. But it had to be done. Both for her as a queen and for her as a woman. He just needs to get over our night together. So far Daario refused to, though he hadn't really said anything since he was wounded. The army is readying itself at a fast pace. Tyrion balanced a chalice in his hand, filled with wine. The Dothraki already have their horses prepared to disembark, and 15,000 freedmen auxiliaries are fully trained and eager to fight. Staring out of the window at her armada, hundreds of ships ready to take the largest army ever assembled to Westeros, Daenerys' gaze rested on one of them, one with a kraken emblazoned on the foresail. And what do you advise regarding the Iron Islanders? Their offer is very generous. And the woman would be far better off on the throne for me than the uncle they spoke of. She turned, finding Catelyn shifting uncomfortably. On the other hand, Theon did raid your home and kill nearly everyone in your keep. He very nearly killed your 2 sons. Fire burned in her violet eyes. Theon had been an arse when she was in Winterfell, and no manner of apologies could change what he had did in her eyes. An attack on the family of my children is an attack on me. Seeing Catelyn's indecision, Tyrion chimed in as the voice of reason. As satisfying as it would be to engage in vengeance, ladies, you must remember your children are alive. Only one is confirmed alive, Tyrion. Dany hadn't felt safe sending Bran to Karth, but the boy was oddly persistent. He was well protected in any case. The deal with Yara Greyjoy presented us in the past week is generous, and as you have said, Your Grace, petty vengeance is in the place of sound strategy does not ever work, as you know personally, Lady Stark. Of course she had remembered, given that having Tyrion captured at knife point for allegedly setting an assassination attempt on Bran Stark nearly caused Ned Stark's death sooner than it had happened in reality. Tyrion hoped she had learned that lesson. Pursing her lips, Catelyn sighed. Bran is alive, and I know he did not murder Rickon. From what he told me of Ramsay Bolton's proclivities, he's suffered enough. Theon's redemption was saving Sansa. He could be lying. Catelyn shook her head. I could tell he wasn't. Take the offer from the Greyjoys. You need the ships. Iron Island caravels and carracks are the best there are in a battle. While the troops are being unloaded on Dragonstone, they can screen the landings. Nodding, Dany sat one of the couches. Very well. They will be spared and welcomed onto war councils for now. I still don't trust them. She had a feeling Jon would punch Theon in the teeth for even saying one word. It made her smirk. Speaking of the war council, how did your meeting with the sellsword captain go? Tyrion watched her with a raised eyebrow. Did you let him down gently? Dany narrowed her eyes. I have no idea what you're talking about. A laugh escaped the imp's lips. I've seen the way he looks at you. Half puppy dog and half hungry wolf. Filling the wine cup in his hand with more of the straw-coloured liquid, the white vintage was better than Dornish red, though he would drink horse piss if it was the only vintage available. He took a hearty sip. As your hand, it is best that I know these things. Clasping her fingers together, Dany closed her eyes and exhaled. Yes, I dallied with him once. It was a mistake then, but I am fond of Daario Naharis as a commander. I told him that I wished him to stay in Meereen, to hold it in case the masters shake themselves out of their torpor and attack. Then he professed his love for me. It was sweet, but she had no feelings for him in the slightest. Her heart belonged to another. He won't be the first to love you, Your Grace, nor will he be the last. He drank another gulp. You are a queen, and are planning to be queen of these 7 kingdoms. You will need to make alliances through marriage. That will win you the realm, more than any show of military strength. Her jaw set in determination. There is only one I will marry. Jon Snow, the father of my children. He would bind the North to her, Catelyn noted, expecting Tyrion's counter-protests. I did consider him first, and he's a top candidate, given what I remember of him, Your Grace. However, love cannot take the place of strategy and duty. Much as it would pain me to hurt you in any way, Tyrion being lucky in finding and keeping the woman he loved, but having endured a marriage based on politics, he would not wish to hurt his queen. He had grown to care for her, but marrying a bastard could jeopardize your standing. Instead of blowing up, Dany only smirked. She nodded at Catelyn, who smiled softly. Tyrion, it is time I inform you of the truth. He leaned forward, curious as to what she could mean. Jon Snow isn't Ned Stark's bastard. This Tyrion did not expect. So whose child is he? He is the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, the true-born son. Blinking in disbelief, Tyrion shifted his gaze to Catelyn Stark. Aye, it's true. I was shown the marriage documents by Ned himself. Rhaegar and Lyanna were lawfully husband and wife. The guilt still ate at her. After Lyanna died, Ned took him as his own to protect the Targaryen child from Robert Baratheon's wrath. Silence reigned for the moment. 2 sets of feminine eyes set upon the Lannister dwarf, gauging his reaction. The curly beard and moustache hid it for a moment, but soon the immense grin that had begun to form on his face erupted into raucous laughter. Wine spilled over the floor as he shook with mouth. Oh, Eddard Stark! He wheezed between chuckles. Just when I thought you couldn't get even more honourable. Tyrion struggled to compose himself. Pretending to have a bastard and dishonouring yourself to protect your beloved sister's child from a fat tyrant bent on killing all Targaryens. If I wasn't Ned Stark, I wouldn't believe it. So you do believe it? Catelyn asked, a bit surprised by his unexpected reaction. Yes. Gulping down the last of his wine, Tyrion managed to regain himself. Believe me, if you had been trying to lie to me, then this wouldn't have been it. He sat back down, a hand on his stomach. Well, this clearly changes things. The incest issue isn't a problem for your house, so that problem isn't a problem at all. Being the heir to the 7 kingdoms and having Stark blood makes him... He has the most noble blood in all the realm. Targaryen and Stark. I suppose you can get both political benefits and marry for love, Your Grace. The beaming smile of a woman in love returned to Dany, just as it had when she found out the truth about Jon. Yes, honoured hand. I am lucky. She rose. Excuse me. I will be visiting my children. As soon as she left the room, Tyrion started laughing again. Jon Snow. No, Robert, you fat idiot. If you only knew. Catelyn scowled. Joffrey will be just as determined to get rid of him. That is true. Only I doubt Jon Snow would let him without a fight. You don't have to be here, Robb whispered to his sister, as the opposing party galloped ever forward. Behind the hills, the tops of Winterfell's towers were just visible. Nestled in the van of the collection of lords and commanders, Davos, Tormund, Brienne, the Blackfish, Lyanna Mormont, and others, all collected through the cajoling and wheedling that would bring them to bear. Catelyn and Davos had proved quite adept at diplomatic dealing. Securing the Blackfish had been a coup, but the neutrality of the Glovers, Mantleys, and Kerwyns really set them back. The 2 Starks watched as the fluttering flayed man and 3-headed dragon banners approached. No. Sansa's voice was as hard as steel. I have to. After what seemed like hours, the Bolton Targaryen party reached the Starks. Tension permeated the air. My beloved wife, Ramsay finally said, eyes settling on Sansa. I've missed you terribly. He turned to look at Robb. Thank you for returning Lady Bolton to me safely. Almost manic in his enjoyment of this moment, Ramsay looked at each member of the opposing party. He shared a laugh with his king. Viserys looked as haunty as ever. So, where is your bastard commander? He giggled, even though anything out of his lips sounded sinister. He probably ran away, Hand, Viserys laughed, though it was anything but sinister. He rested his gloved hand against the gold cast of his left. Fled like the cowardly bastard he is. Allowing herself a smirk, Dany looked back at the horizon. There was a small, low-flowing speck. Actually, he should be here quite soon. A loud shriek, deep and booming, resonated across the plain. All Bolton allies but Ramsay flinched while Stark men grinned, flapping hard, low off the ground, swooping in the green form of Rhaegal. Perched upon his back was Jon Snow, dressed every inch a Stark warrior. Planting himself on the ground, Rhaegal let out an ear-splitting roar. His rider held on with the skill of an expert. Rhaegal, sit. One grunt left the beast's maw, and he relaxed onto the ground, narrow eyes blazing at his rider's foes. Jon gazed at each man opposing him. Some, like Viserys, much to Jon's chagrin and amusement, were visibly cowering. Others, like small Jon Umber, flinched but recovered their icy composure for their enemies. Ramsay, on the other hand, wasn't perturbed at all. Much to Sansa's annoyance, though she kept it hidden behind narrowed eyes, his mania seemed to increase. Oh, wonderful! The rumours were true! He giggled again. I always wanted to see a dragon. Not that it will matter to you. A grin spread across his face. Had the beast been able to breathe fire, you would have already taken Winterfell. I am sure you would have convinced him of that, dear wife. Sansa merely shot daggers at him, impassive, and waited for Jon to start talking. Stroking Rhaegal's neck, more to calm his own anger than the Green Dragon's, Jon let the silence stretch out the tension. State your terms, Lord Bolton, or should I address the Mad Prince instead? Jon suppressed a smirk as Viserys nearly turned purple at the old insult. Biting back profanities, the king tried to recover his regal composure. In reality, he just looked ridiculous. It doesn't matter, bastard. My hand will inform you of my terms, which are lenient considering what you deserve. Hand, you may proceed. All right. Ramsay was giddy. Dismount and kneel before the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms, and the king will grant you his clemency. To all of you traitors, for he is a man of mercy. The grin never vanished. Oh, and the king will be wanting that dragon, and I my wife. They belong to their rightful masters, not a bastard son of a fallen lord and a southern whore. If you only knew, Jon thought. Ramsay continued, smirking darkly. Also, his grace will release your younger brother as an act of mercy. How do we know you have him? Robb asked. At that point, small Jon Umber tossed a rotting head of a direwolf. That put an end to that. There is no need for battle. Jon played the haughty, nonplussed monarch better than Viserys ever could. Why not? I have Targaryen and Stark blood, 2 royal lines. You and me. Fight to the death, like the old ways. You can throw the Mad Prince in there as well. Robb chuckled dryly. From what I hear, it would still be a one-on-one. The Stark forces couldn't help but laugh at Viserys' expense. The Bolton commanders suppressed their smirks and snickers. Ramsay ignored it, silently agreeing. He is good. He looked at both Robb and Sansa. Your bastard brother is good, and from what I hear, a great swordsman. I don't know if I can beat him, but I do know that armies of the rightful king will slaughter you. Not a hard choice to make. Eyes narrowing once more, Sansa looked him straight in the eye. You're going to die tomorrow, Lord Bolton. You and your false king. Urging her horse, she galloped away. With Sansa gone, Ramsay couldn't hold back his manic glee. You are fine men! Giggles left him. My hounds will love to feast on you. I haven't fed them in 7 days. They are hungry. Wouldn't it be quite the sight, my king? Grinning, Viserys spoke himself. The fact that he had let Ramsay steal the dominance of the conversation was obvious to all but him. Do thank you for taking care of my dragon, bastard. I shall need it for my reign. As if sensing the words from the interloper, Rhaegal growled menacingly. Don't worry about your sister, though. My hand will only use her as long as she is useful. Laughing, he glanced at Ramsay. Jon could sense the contempt from the Bolton lord, and could sense that Viserys was too stupid to pick it up. Not that it surprised him. As I told her long ago, I would let the whole world fuck her if it would get me my throne. It took all of Jon's strength and self-confidence not to murder Viserys where he stood. Dany. Viserys had sold Dany to the same monster his sister had been enslaved to. At that moment, Jon knew what it was going to come to. There would be no deals, no treaties. This was no ordinary war, with a conquered and a conqueror. Only a victor and a corpse. Flickering torches banished the darkness from Winterfell's courtyard, the black sky waiting above the light as a shroud threatening a malevolent descent. Ramsay Bolton gazed at the dazzling array of flayed men banners of his house. He ignored the Targaryen three-headed dragons, finding them as irrelevant as his supposed ruler, gingerly avoiding the ice slicks that dotted the ground. Marching men melted the snow, since there were a lot of them, and there was a lot of refrozen ice patches that caused quite a few injuries. Shaking his hand at the struggling servants dragging a huge contraption on wheels, he made his way over to his king. You summoned me, your grace? Innocence dripping off his tongue. He has a dragon! That bastard half-breed northern cur has a dragon! Viserys' eyes blazed of madness. It was clear what side of the coin had fallen on. My slut sister is behind this. I knew it. They fucked each other and now she sent him a dragon. A dragon meant for me! That said, the dragon looked as if it wanted to eat Viserys alive, amused Ramsay to no end. But he declined the two-stated. Do not worry, your grace. The dragon was wounded north of the wall, and so is no threat. Our allies from the Riverlands have ensured this. He motioned from the Black Walder Rivers, the bastard son of Walder Frey and in co-command of Viserys' army. Pulling the tarp off, the king blinked at what looked to be a giant crossbow. What the seven hells is this? It is a scorpion, your grace. Tywin Lannister was having them designed in King's Landing for when your sister deploys her dragons in a potential war. I managed to purchase 3 smaller ones before you were formally announced as king. Black Walder hefted a thin spear bolt. It fires this at high speeds, ensuring both accuracy and penetrating ability. I want the dragon alive, hand. Viserys snarled. Thinking I'd kill the dragon, as if I'm as stupid as you? Ramsay only smiled at his king. Of course, your grace. The bolt is only to weaken the beast. He reached into a box, 2 bannermen having pried it open when they walked in. Out came a grappling hook, long and with a stout rope tied to the end. We'll wheel these bastards close once the beast cannot move. Running his hand along the wood, Viserys grinned like a hyena. This pleases me. A look of puzzlement crossed his face. But how will we get the dragon close enough to take it down? Snow won't charge at us, will he? Even the fool could have moments of sanity. Ramsay figured. He gestured to the kennel, lips contorting into that same sadistic smirk. Leave that to me, my king. It was dank in the command tent, darkness having fallen long before in the early dusk of winter. The light and warmth given off by the fires only filling the space within the canvas walls with smoke and must. Most were used to it, however. The Northmen and free folk especially. It didn't stop at any from planning at hand. Our scouts have picked up our activity on the King's Road. Davos breathed. The Freys have arrived, led by Black Walder. Damn, the Blackfish said. Of all the backstabbing weasels, he's got the most capable on the field. Though that isn't saying much. Jon cast an eye on his sibling's uncle. The men he brought with him nearly turned the tide, but the Freys threw that disadvantage down the latrine. So, what do we have now? Grabbing a large staff tipped with a wooden block, Robb began to move pieces into position. The last time he had gone over something like this had been prior to the Red Wedding, and that hadn't gone well at all. He prayed daily that it wouldn't happen to Jon. "We have 3,500 wildlings." He nodded at Tormund, who had delivered bigly. 150 Tyrell pikemen, 4,000 assorted horsemen from the northern houses, and 900 Tully infantry. He watched as Davos moved the enemy into position. Meanwhile, the Boltons, Umbers, and Karstarks have over 5,000 men on their own, and the Freys, conservatively, boasted that number by 4,000. So we're outnumbered by 3,000, especially on cavalry. Leaning on the table, arms spreading out, Jon felt long odds hitting him. "We have to get them to come to us." "Speak for yourself, King Crow." Tormund crossed his arms. "Mounted knights will cut us down like a knife through meat." "That's why I'm having our men dig trenches on either side, which will protect our sides. If we can get them to attack, they can tie themselves on our defences long enough for the Tully infantry to swing around and hit them on the flank. Enveloped." Lyanna Mormont huffed. "We could have doubled enveloped if the Glovers hadn't wimped out." "Aye, but the plan is the best we have. If we hold, victory is ours." As the commanders and Jon Lords left the tent, Jon reflected on how little he believed himself. Soon it was just him, Robb, and Sansa. Arguably the only Starks left alive. It was surreal. Standing for the first time since the meeting began, Sansa looked at Jon with a weary look. "Brother, I fear you have made a terrible error." "Sansa, Jon needs his sleep for the coming fight. Robb, we should hear her out." Jon was not going to be the person that allowed no question to his leadership from those he could trust. "The plans could be better, but we did what we could." "You met Ramsay for all of one conversation. I've lived with him and know him in ways you could never fathom or stomach. You are playing right into his hands." Eyes darting from Sansa to Robb to the table and back to Sansa, Jon sighed. "I know Viserys, Sansa. I spent time with him, as Robb did with the Freys. He is a fool and will blunder into our trap." A frustrated chuckle left Sansa's lips. "If you think that pompous fool is in charge, Ramsay is the one here. He manipulates people, enjoys manipulating people. Ramsay never falls for tricks. He is the master trickster. His numerical superiority makes him overconfident." Robb interjected. "You don't know him." "Then how do we get Rickon back, Sansa?" Robb's face was plastered with emotion. Sorrow and pain crossed Sansa's face. She forced it behind her mask. "You will never get him back. Give up thinking that you will. He is Ned Stark's true-born son. He's a greater threat to Ramsay than a bastard, a fallen king, or a girl." She looked straight into Jon's eyes. "Jon, do not fall for his tricks." Stepping forward, Jon put his hand on her shoulder. "Sister, I know what you are trying to say, but I haven't played with sticks in the time we were apart. I have fought worse than Ramsay Bolton. I've defeated worse than Ramsay Bolton." He gestured to the table. "We've pleaded with every house, and we're lucky to have this many men. To have a dragon that can at least fight on the ground. Every day he grows stronger, so we can't delay. There is no better time to strike." "It's not enough! It's all we have!" Silence fell over the three of them. Two of them, Jon noticing that Robb had stepped out. For what reason he couldn't fathom. Sansa stared at him, eyes cold with resigned sorrow. "Jon, if Ramsay wins—" She bit her lip. "I don't intend to be taken alive." The rightful king watched as she left the tent. "There is only one avenue left to me." She resigned herself to make a deal with the devil. A tear falling into the snow below as the situation of her family found itself in. Gazing blankly at the various units' designations on the map, Jon lashed out. His fists slammed the intricate colours and squiggles. Everything was falling apart. Defeat was likely. I can't even protect my own family. He wondered if this was what his father thought. What both thought. Rhaegar on the floodplains of the River Trident, or Ned at the Tower of Joy. Hells, even Robb at the Red Wedding. God damn it! Jon needed air. He needed to feel the cold. Freezing winds hit him like a relieving cup of water on a hot day. No matter how much dragon blood coursed through his veins, There was no doubt that Jon was a northerner, through and through. Ice as well as fire. Cold focused his mind. Cold was his element, and only Tormund could challenge him for fighting experience in icy weather. Jon looked at the maze of tents. These were strong men, hardened men. They could win. You have to promise me something. Jon's eyes picked up on muffled voices. Peeking around the tent, he made out two figures. One was his brother. If something happens to me, to Jon, I need you to get Sansa and the dragons. Take them to Eastwatch, and sail for Slaver's Bay, Marjorie. Marjorie? So that's where Robb went. Why there? Because that's where my mother is. Ask for her, and for Queen Daenerys. Jon's heart hitched at the mentioning of Slaver's Bay. They will keep you safe. Emotion clouded Robb's voice. I've lost so much already. I can't lose Sansa to that madman. I can't lose you. Seeing the two of them embrace, lips touching comfortingly, Jon allowed his brother privacy. There was no way he'd intrude on such an intimate moment. He had noticed the stolen glances between the two of them, and silently wished his brother well. Robb deserved a second chance at love. Dany. If there was ever anyone that could help him in this fight, it was her. Staggering to the edge of the encampment, Jon looked in the inhospitable northern wilderness. His home. In despair. Why didn't I contact her? Sam had alluded to it. Sansa had basically said it back at the Castle Black. Perhaps it was disbelief. Perhaps he figured she wouldn't love him anymore. Perhaps, even after everything he knew now, Jon still felt unworthy. And now it was too late. Lord Snow. Or was it? Striding next to him, Melisandre looked the same expanse of wilderness he did. Calming yourself before your victory? I admire optimism. A bird perched overhead. A crow. Did you see that? In the future. The signs of the Lord of Light gives to me. I follow them. And in everything he shows me points to a great victory by the prince that was promised. Despite his doubt in what the Red Women preached, both his true mother and father believed the same. They were convinced he was Azor Ahai reborn, and told him as much. Even still, a question popped into his mind. You said dragons are very mystical creatures. Is it the same with dragon riders? She glanced at him. I am confused at what you request, my king. Can a dragon rider communicate with another, the same way they communicate with their dragons? Jon held on to the hope. The last hope for victory, no matter what Melisandre's gods said. Blinking, the Red Witch pondered. I have heard stories of old Valyria. The bond between dragon and rider is forged by a special connection, which is why a dragon only can connect with their birther and their rider. If riders have a connection between each other, then the connection would have to be strong. Hanging his head, Jon stared south at where his childhood home rested, unable to see it through the hills and woods, but almost making out the tallest spire of the castle's tower. Melisandre? Yes, my lord? If I am to die on the field of battle. Sighing deeply, closing his eyes for but a moment, Jon felt the weight of all of it falling upon him. All he wanted was peace, for it to be over. His being resurrected before was a sign. But did he want to perpetually cheat death? I'll leave it to the gods to decide. Don't attempt to bring me back. Eyes widening for a split second, the Red Witch eventually nodded. I can make that promise, Lord Jon Snow, because it will not happen. You will be victorious. You seem to be the only confident one, Jon chuckled. Either that or break down. The prince who was promised has a destiny to fulfill. It will not end on a simple battlefield outside of Winterfell Castle. With that, she strode away, leaving Jon alone with himself, a place Jon was quite familiar with. The Red Witch's words swirled in his mind. Could he communicate with her? It was obvious that he and Rhaegal had a connection, dragon and to dragon rider, and that connection was shared with his children. But would such an action be with Dany be a stretch? Sansa was right. The army was vastly outnumbered, now that the Frey forces had joined up with Ramsay. The armies of Viserys Targaryen were superior to theirs in every way. Only a fool would deny it. Much as he wished it were different, much as he would like to hug Sansa and tell her they would win, Jon couldn't. He'd be dead on the field once the battle concluded if a miracle didn't occur. There was nothing to lose for trying. Kneeling in the snow, eyes closed yet head angled towards the partially obscured stars, Jon focused his mind. Dany, my love. The words of affection, so long banished from the isolation and fundamental loneliness of his vows, and his position in the north, tumbled out. They felt strange to the tongue, yet supremely right at the same time. If you can hear me, please. We are in peril. And I need your help. I need your help. Nothing but the harsh winds replied to his plea. Hands on the railing, silver hair whipping in the steady breeze, Dany watched her 2 children with a smile. From their time on the open ocean, Balerion and Edaron had grown to be excellent fishermen. The long necks and gusty winds allowed them to glide over the water and ambush the large fish from above. She loved to see them so happy and carefree, though the longing for the still missing Rhaegal still gnawed at her. Your Grace? Dany turned her head to see Missandei standing up to her. I can report that the twins are safely ashore at Dragonstone. The raven from Lord Varys arrived barely 10 minutes ago. A sigh left her lips. Thank the gods. Dany missed her babies desperately. They hadn't left her side since they were born, though she was sure they'd be protected. But when she found Jon again, it would be best if he knew what he was expecting before they met for the first time. She hoped he wouldn't be angry. Placing a tanned hand over her lily-white one, Missandei smiled. Don't worry. If he's as amazing as you make him out to be, then he'll love them. Dany looked at her gratefully, silently thanking her for the comfort. Suddenly, an unseen flash hit Dany. Her eyes opened wide. Jon! It was as if she had heard his words, standing right next to him. Every word. Hey everybody! End of that chapter. Hope you enjoyed it. Whoo boy. Here we go. Battle of the Bastards. Next chapter. Oh, I love that little bit with Robb and Marjorie. Again, I just ship those 2. And just, yeah. Viserys thinking he's in charge while even Ramsay hates him. Wow. Anyway, remember to like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified for whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye, my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Bye!